As soon as the judge made that decision to not let April McLaughlin gain custody of her 13 dogs back, there was a lot of happiness here, screaming, people hugging, and you can just see that there are a lot of people here in support. A lot of these rescues and community members began arriving here in front of the courthouse hours before the hearing even started. Although a majority of the people here weren't allowed inside, many of them watched on their phones and had their earphones in, listening to every single thing happening inside that hearing. Many of these signs are accusing April of abusing dogs with special needs. And again, lots of people out here just extremely angry that it even got to this point. Because of the interest in this case, only a certain amount of people were allowed inside. Those people arrived at the court around 8:30 this morning and received a wristband. And this case really gathered a lot of attention online and on social media. All of that quickly escalating to the fact that Chandler Police and the Arizona Humane Society got involved. We've spoken to many organizations across the country over the past few weeks that believed April McLaughlin was housing the dogs under a reputable rescue. They now tell us once they found out about the criminal investigation into her rescue for animal abuse, they began working together to take ownership of those dogs back and put them into safe environments. Again, McLaughlin released ownership of 34 dogs today, but there are still 13 that she was hoping to claim as personal pets. Of course, she can appeal this decision by the judge. Dozens of people here today just shocked that McLaughlin even had the opportunity to ask for ownership of these dogs back after the horrific conditions they were found living in.
With the gross neglect and abuse that happened, and that everyone's seen the pictures, everyone's seen the evidence, so it's ridiculous that she even has the opportunity.
The conditions of the house, the abuse that her mom withstood, the 5 dead dogs in the freezer, the dead dog that was in the trash, the 55 that were seized, and the ones that had to be euthanized. It's concerning. It's like, how do you look the other way and pretend that that's not what she's capable of?
And there are rescues that still haven't been able to track down dogs they say they gave McLaughlin before they knew about these accusations. Again, lots of people extremely happy for the outcome that happened inside the courtroom today, but still a lot of people feeling angry just about how slow the investigation seemed to go and how long it took Chandler Police and the Arizona Humane Society to investigate this. They are hoping this case just brings change and allows investigators to start looking into these sorts of animal abuse cases a lot quicker. Of course, we will have a lot more on this story throughout our newscast, so definitely stay close on azfamily.com and our app. Reporting live here in Chandler, Alexis Dominguez for Arizona's Family.
Alexis